Hi, welcome back to Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. I am so excited to have you back in the podcast studio as we go into our last month of 2024. Yes, we are closing out this year in the month of December with two more dynamic guests this month as we go into the holidays. We're already into the holidays because of Thanksgiving and now because of Christmas and then New Year's. New Year is upon us. And so as we go into the holiday season, I want to continue our conversations on self-care, health, and wellness. And particularly for this month, for the month of December, we're going to be talking about issues around self-care as it relates to grief, holiday grief, trauma, transitions, and even seasonal depression. We'll be sharing with our guests that'll be coming to us this month. And today, or this week, our podcast conversation is going to be around transitions, thoughtful transitions, and holiday grief. I want you to share these podcast conversations with your family, with your friends, as we close out this year of podcast conversations on the Harmonize Your Life podcast. Listen, we have been now in 14 seasons of this podcast, and this month will close out season 14. And I am so grateful that you have tracked with us for these past 4 years on the Harmonize Your Life podcast. I want you to pray with us as we prepare for year 2025 and how the podcast will shape out for the coming year. Pray with us for strategy and ideas, and even email me at drtonyalvarado.com with any topics that you would like for us to explore as we go into the year 2025. So I'll be right back with our next guest right after this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Well, again, I am glad to bring a new voice, a new face to the Harmonize Your Life podcast. A new sister acquaintance for me and connection for me through our mutual sister and friend, Dr. Kelly Farrell, and the wellness circle that we are embarking upon together. I want to thank Dr. Jaime, or introduce you all to Dr. Jaime Eaddy Chism, as she is our podcast conversationalist for this season of the Harmonize Your Life podcast. And I am so delighted to bring her to you. I want to give you a little bit of her background, and then we'll get into our conversation. Reverend Dr. Jaime Eaddy Chism is a multifaceted healer, dreamer, theologian, thanatologist, and traumatologist who plays a vital role in her community. Her work is dedicated to promoting healing and well-being, focusing on navigating trauma, loss, and grief. She skillfully combines her commitment to justice and liberation with her expertise in thanatology and trauma in her educational guidance and care services. She believes in a multi-sensory experience and uses sound therapy, aromatherapy, somatic healing practices, and touch in her work. Dr. Jaime supports many individuals, including educators, activists, clergy, medical professionals, staff, and community members, especially during their most challenging and distressing times. She passionately commits herself to challenging systems that perpetuate death and strives to create sacred space to explore our shared humanity. She actively promotes a decolonized approach to learning and care and is acutely aware of the white-centered approach in many deaf circles. Because swallowed grief is never digested, her vision is to provide a breathing space for grief, emphasizing empathy, equity, and compassion. She serves as a grief doula. I love that. A grief doula and director of wellness and counseling for the Anti-Violence Partnership of Philadelphia, where she supports individuals and communities impacted by violence and homicide. She is the founder of Thoughtful Transitions, and there they do grief work, the Ratchet Grief Project, which showcases her commitment to innovative approaches to healing and transformation. Dr. Chism lives in Philadelphia and is married to Dr. Michael D. Chism. Welcome to the Harmonize Your Life podcast, Dr. Jaime.
Thank you. And congratulations on 14 seasons. Listen.
Yeah.
How many of us have been taking a journey of wellness because you decided to do this work? So thank you for having me here today to join in the others who have ushered us into new spaces of healing. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm telling you, we started this work. We started this we started the work, I would say in 2016.
Right.
When I hosted my first self-care retreat with 5 women here in Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Yeah.
I had 5 women meet me here at Stone Mountain, Georgia at the Evergreen Hotel. And we did a 2-day stay. I think we only did a 1-night overnight stay.
Yeah.
And so it has grown. And now the self-care retreat is where we started. And then I wrote the book in 2018, Harmonize Your Life, A Journey Towards Self-Care. And we've been hosting the retreats now since 2016, started with 5 women. And now in January, we're taking 120 women to Costa Rica. Can you believe that? From 5 women to 120 women out of the country, no doubt.
Listen.
Yeah. And then we started the podcast in 2020.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the podcast, Dr. Jaime, is I did my first episode. I launched the podcast. I did the recordings in February 2020. And my children were the one who pushed me out there. They were like, "Ma, you need to do a podcast." And I said, "Oh, Lord, I don't know anything about a podcast and how that works." But we did our first recording for the podcast in February. And little did we know, we launched our first episode in March 2020.
Yeah.
Little did we know we would be in a global pandemic.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, "God, what are you doing? You got me starting something new and the world is shutting down." And I didn't know what God was doing. But now I realize, this work is what we needed. And I know it was right on time, because having conversations in the middle of a pandemic, and we know how our community has been and continues to be impacted by systemic racism and injustice as it relates to health and wellness. And the work that you're doing, oh my God, I was so impressed. I was on your website and just like, we got connected through Dr. Kelly, but I've been researching and looking you up and paying attention to the work that you're doing. And I'm just so excited to have you with us here in the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to join. Again, I think it blends beautifully, right? Because of the work that you're doing. This fits into the space really beautifully. So I'm glad to talk about it today.
I'm just so glad. So share a little bit about your story and why you're passionate about this work, the work you're doing in thanatology. I mean, it's not that many of us, in case you all don't know what thanatology is, will you define what thanatology is for us?
Yeah, let's start with that. So thanatology is the academic study of death, dying, grief, and bereavement. And so there are a couple of schools where you can get certifications and or your master's in thanatology. It's not one of those popular subjects, right? Most folks may go into social work or counseling, but those don't necessarily have a robust education in death, dying, grief, and bereavement.
Okay.
And from the time I was a teenager, I was interested in grief. Now, I didn't know that was the language for it,
Okay.
but how do people navigate these losses? And even as a young teen, I recognized that loss was not just around the death of a loved one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite people in the world, my cousin Pauline Bennett, transitioned in 1989. I was 13 years old. And my grandmother transitioned in 1995. And what I realized about those two deaths was that they had a profound shift in family dynamics, right? And so why did I get interested? My grandmother had dinner at her house every Sunday. There had to be at least 40, 50 people
I
at
know that.
Alberta Brown's house on Sunday, right? Because her two sisters, Josephine, Darlene, their children and children came. So me and 20 of my cousins, our parents. So it was a huge dinner. When my grandmother died in 95, everyone went to their respective homes, right? Not intentionally, just grieving and pulling away. And so it was one death, but also many other deaths or transitions in the family. So I started just getting curious about it. And then when I went to school, I went to Howard University, and I'm out here in Washington, D.C. You know, right? And so I'm out here.
I'm not Howard. Just so I just want to put that out there. I'm not
You
Howard.
know what we do.
I pastor a lot of Howard people.
Yes.
And friends.
So I'm out here in DC, and I'm a waitress, right? I'm paying my way through school. I'm a waitress. And I found that whenever people were encountering loss in their lives, they would come to me or ask me to help. And then I got licensed and ordained in ministry at Metropolitan Baptist Church in Washington, DC. And I was there for 20 some odd years. And we were a large church, a lot of associate ministers. And there was an assignment for funeral rotation.
Okay.
And somehow I got the assignment, but instead of just having, say, a week or a month, because there were enough of us that you could have it 1 week per year.
Okay.
I ended up on it for years. And my mentor said, lean into it. God is telling you something. And I leaned in and realized that liminal space, that space around loss, that space around transitions, that I was gifted, right? So some of us, you're gifted, you're born with this gift, but also I was willing to study and to practice. And so that's how I got pulled into it. And between chaplaincy and community work and volunteering at domestic violence shelter and work, all of that was around grief. Yeah. And that's what pulled me in.
So that, and I'm glad that you explained that, and your story around your grandmother.
Yeah.
It's amazing because I was just sharing with someone the other day. So of course I know that story from the grandmother piece, right? Because my grandmother passed in 2007. And the same thing, every Sunday after church, we all was at Granny's house at the church. And so, of course, I kind of got away from that because I moved to Atlanta before Grandma passed. But I know the way it just felt different going back to I'm from Chicago, right? And I moved to Atlanta at 25. And so, but that tradition of going to Grandma's house every Sunday, I wrote a poem about her called Grandma's Table. And and so Grandma's Kitchen, it actually was, and just talked about how that gathering in her kitchen and her kitchen table was her pulpit, right?
Yes.
And so I know how it shifts things when that person, but then a more closer reality for me, recent reality, is my own mother's passing when she passed in 2021. And so it's been now me and my sisters, the holidays just feel so different now. Right. And it's like that glue, that center, the one. And I remember that first year after Mom passed, we all just scattered.
Right.
And it's like, why did we scatter? You know what I'm saying? And so that I saw someone say on social media the other day, when the glue to the family passes on, holidays, feel different from now on. Or somebody said when your mother dies, holidays never are the same,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that whole death and dying, we know it, but I'm so glad to see someone of color going into that study and
Yeah.
helping us to navigate those muddy waters.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not, as you said, there's an organization for thanatologists in general, and there are not a lot of us, right? There are not a lot of um, culturally sensitive and appropriate literature, voices, all of that. And so not only do I feel called to the work, not only am I passionate about the work, but I also need to do the work because it matters when people hear or see someone who looks like them in the space, right? So I feel God has called me. Yes, as preacher, I am also called to this very specific work, but also passionate. But yeah, it's a need. Somebody has to fill that need, and I'm glad to be one who does it.
Yeah. And I know what you mean when you say it's good that we have someone that looks like us. This whole podcast is dedicated to women of color, right?
Yeah.
When I first started the podcast, I went back and forth with, should I just make it Harmonize Your Life podcast and not really specifically center the conversations around or for or with women of color? And I'm glad that I finally came to this conclusion that, yeah, this is where I need to be. This is the space I need to be in. And this is my tribe. This is my community, right?
Yep.
Not that other communities can't participate or that we can't share, but I know that a lot of times we've been left out of conversations.
Right.
We've been left out of information.
Right.
And so to be able to bring these type of conversations to our community have been life-giving and sometimes life-saving.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, life-saving.
So thanatology is the study of death and dying and grief.
Yes.
Right. So how do you define grief?
Yeah. So grief is our human or natural response to loss, change, transition, unmet expectations, deferred dreams, and that includes death, the death of someone. But it's not solely centered around sort of human death, that last breath. When you have an expectation that's here, but your reality is here, that gap in between can be experienced like grief, right? When you lose your job or your hair or your relationship, when you receive new information, new revelation, say spiritually, and it begins to make you think, okay, wait a minute, maybe there's more to my faith than I knew, and you become a new person. There's grief. So all of those transitions that we go through. So basically, from our first breath to our last breath, we are navigating losses, changes, and transitions. Therefore, from our first breath, baby, to our last breath, right? We are navigating grief.
We are navigating grief. Wow.
Our whole life. And that's
interesting. I'm glad you said that. Our whole life, because oftentimes we think that it's just a moment in time. And I'm glad. I really like the way you said that we are navigating grief our entire lives. So it's not a one-time experience.
No, it's not a one-time experience. And this is why I think it helps to have other voices in the space, because grief is not a bad thing, right? Now, I'm not wishing loss on any of us. So that's that piece. I understand the connection to mother, to grandmother, to partner, to friend. I don't wish that loss. And that loss is also inevitable, because part of what happens in life is that we don't remain in these bodies forever, right? So from first breath to last breath, you are going to be navigating change and transition. And the more we can talk about it, the more we see that it's not a bad thing. Here's one of the ways I describe grief to Dr. Tony, is that grief is not just an experience of loss. It is Spirit's invitation for us to reimagine. It is an opportunity to reorient ourselves and trust that the God who has created us has given us the capacity to become new in the new day, because yesterday is gone.
Wow.
Right. And so I need to know that I have within me, and perhaps within community, the capacity to be new in today. Because yesterday's me is gone. You are not the same Dr. Tony that existed when your mother was on this earth.
Exactly.
And if you didn't have the capacity to become Dr. Tony of today, right? Where would we be? So that's God. It's God's way of saying, I know you don't have this person or this thing anymore, but I have created in you this capacity to keep going. So that's the gift of grief.
Oh, the gift of grief. Oh, so that whole reimagining who I am now, and maybe even possibilities
who I can become.
Now, you know what's interesting? My father passed away when I was 5 years old. Okay. And so my mother was a 21-year-old widow with 4 girls growing up in Chicago, in Chicago. So I'm the oldest of 4.
Yeah.
And so at 21, my mother was a widow with 4 girls, right? Because my father passed at 20. He was 26. She was 21. They got married very early. Actually, they got married after, right before I was born. Okay, so my mom was a teenage mother, dropped out of school, whole story behind all that. So my mother married as a teenage mother. She married, ended up, becoming a widow. And she never really, I remember her, we had a conversation one day when I might have been a young adult. And she said something that I thought was really strange. And it's to your point. She said, when my father died, she was angry. Of course, she was confused. She was, disoriented. But she told me, because my mother later on in life, she went back. My mom dropped out of school. She ended up going back to school, becoming a registered nurse, all of that. Going back, she got a GED, then she got her associate degree in nursing, then her bachelor's degree in nursing. My mother, in 1969, got a job at the University of Chicago Hospital as a nurse's aide. And by the time she retired, she had to medically retire because of arthritis. She was the head nurse of neurology on the floor where she started out as a nurse's aide. But listen, Dr. Jaime, Mama said to me one day, she said, it took her years to realize that she don't know if she would have became that person had my father lived. And not that anything was wrong with him, but his death gave her the opportunity to become someone totally different than she ever imagined she could be.
Yes.
And I didn't understand that at first. I was like, what do you mean? But she found some way in there. She found something good coming out of it. Am I saying that the right way?
Yes. So it is my grandmother, best cook. I know everybody think their grandmother and mother was the best cook. Mine really was. Right. So we said, so amazing person, the most hospitable. My grandmother used to keep her door open. I was jealous as a young child because people would come in and call my grandmother grandma. And I was like, you aren't that's not your grandmother. Like, so don't do, right. So young, but what she taught me was that if there was somebody in the community that didn't have food, yes, they did, because she did. If she had food, then there was nobody that would be hungry.
Had to be twins.
Now, listen, there was nobody in the community that was hungry because Grandma Birdie had food, right? And so when she died, I realized that she planted that in me, right? And so I don't know if she was still here, if what I would be, but I know that I looked to the fact that she was no longer here, and I saw people hungry, and I said, Alberta would want me because I got food. She would want me to make sure you had food, right? And so I did that. I know that I learned lessons that still live today because the people who planted them are not here. And as you said, your mother, she had something in her that reminded her she could still dream again. She could be again. And now, right, she followed that path. And there are some things that we only learn through loss. Again, this is not wishing loss on anybody.
There's some things we only learn.
We only learn through loss. There's some development that can only occur when something is removed, right? And so again, I say this, Dr. Tony, I really try to help folks say, I am not wishing the loss on anyone. I am only acknowledging that the losses, particularly around life and relationships, are inevitable. And so God says, well, what you going to do with it? Because it's inevitable. Dr. Valerie Bridgman, a mutual, right? She says, like, life is not, people say life, there are bumps in life's road. She says, no, life is a bumpy road. So it changes your perspective. It is, your life is filled with losses. It's not just that a loss happens here and there. Your life really is filled with losses. So the question is, will you allow the loss to transform you? Will you allow yourself to learn something new because this person is no longer with you? And that's the beauty of the work that I get to do with people, is to get them to see, I know mom's not here. I know mom's not here, but I wonder what mom placed in you that can now bloom because she's not here. Like there's something in you.
It's so, when you said, what are we going to do with the loss? It reminds me of a sermon I just preached in our church out of Psalm 137. And when they said, and we sat by the rivers of Babylon, and there we wept, and they asked of us a song, and we said, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? And my title was, what is us gonna do now? And it was a response to the election loss. And I talked about the grief behind the election loss, but somehow we can still sing the Lord's song. We can still work. We can still serve. We can still meet the needs of our community. There's going to be some new, even though we're grieving the loss, what opportunities is God going to give us to emerge as a community behind this loss, right? We don't know all of it yet, but it has to be something in us that can handle the loss.
Yes. God has already placed your future in you. And all you got to do is, and again, right, we can acknowledge that there's some sadness, some anger, some frustration, even some pause, right? For some of us, when we get this loss, I'm not saying get up today and go, I'm saying pause and do what it takes to center and to ground and to reconnect and get help. Dr. Tony, they tell us that the biggest, most important factor in navigating life around grief is your support team. And so it's important for us to have a support system, right? So get all of that, do that, and know that the future is still planted in you. There's some technology that can't be birthed until we enter into new seasons. We ain't have Facebook and Twitter and all of these things. We ain't had this before. It was birthed out of some blue sky. Was birthed out of a loss. And we done all moved over to blue sky, right? So just what does the loss teach? The loss teaches us. Loss teaches you that you still have the power to create.
Oh, I love the way you look at this. Oh, my Lord. So you said that grief, you define grief as our response, our natural response to loss, pain, trauma, all those things. So how race and class and gender, particularly for Black women, impact our expressions of grief and our experiences with grief?
Yeah. So when you think about, say, historical losses and traumas, right? That first of all, I think about grief as one that lives in our bones. So there's something in us that our grandparents gave us, not just the trauma, but also the healing. But there's some lived experiences that our foreparents had that have been passed down to us, right? And so there's some behavior like swallowing our grief, right? Because if you think about, and not that our first experiences in this world were around slavery, but that is a good place for people to see how things shift. So if you think about that time, if a woman is here, maybe her husband, her partner, her son is in the middle and he is being beaten, he's being brutalized, right? The community wants to, what do you want to do when you see someone hurting? You want to protect and save and comfort them. But you are in a situation where you can't move. Why can't you move? Because if you move, one, that's going to worsen their experience. And it might also bring harm or pain to you and or more children, more community. So you learn as women, as community, how to swallow, how not to move, how not to express the pain or the hurt or the anger that's in you. It gets in your body, it gets in your bones, right? And so as we live, then we, particularly Black women, continue to learn how to swallow their emotion. So when something happens, you want to do something, you swallow. You swallow. And what happens now? Now our bodies are sick. Right? We've been swallowing pain for so long, and it's sickening us, right? And so that's one of the ways that this impacts us. The second thing is when you think about disenfranchised grief, many say that Ken Doka,
disenfranchised grief.
yes, disenfranchised grief.
I don't want us to miss these terms.
Nuggets.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So disenfranchised grief, it is when your experience is not valued or acknowledged socially, right? It's when your loss, when somebody says, "Oh, child, that don't matter." And so let's think about how many experiences Black women encounter when people don't, it doesn't matter. And not just Black women. We can think about our incarcerated siblings. It's a whole lot of folk, but for Black women, how much of your life have people said, "Oh, that doesn't matter. Oh, that it doesn't matter that the load
You'll be okay.
You'll be okay. Right? You're a strong Black woman." And so you don't need to take time to pause or to have your pain acknowledged, because you just got to get back to work. And so this rush to production, right? This rush to, I gotta go, I gotta get it done. I gotta grind. This is not to say we don't need to persevere and get stuff done, but this is to say sometimes grief, we experience these losses, and the world around us calls us to disregard our circumstances, right? To disregard our being so that we can go and do stuff. And that is a very, that is shaped by whiteness as a social construct, right? That is shaped by capitalism. So race, gender, class. And that's one of the reasons why we started the Ratchet Grief Project. And that's just, we just go around and listen to people's stories and open up space for them, because we recognize that one, whiteness as a social construct tells you that your grief must look a certain way. So there's a classy way to grieve, right? There's a way to dab your tears and to not be too loud, to not be right. It's we don't need the wailing women. That's still, don't bring that over here. That's so there's this way that society expects you to respond to the trauma and the losses that you're experiencing. And so we did the Ratchet Grief Project to say, listen, we are not going to conform to that which calls us to swallow our identities in this grieving process. And so, yeah, racism, sexism, economic disparities also impact the way Black women and the space Black women have for grieving. Because you think about where we work, some folks get 3 days off, right? They get 3 days off, maybe 5 days off. But they also, these workplaces define for you who is family. My cousins are my siblings. My cousins are the first. I have siblings, but my cousins are also my siblings. And many offices, many workspaces don't allow you time off for, they don't call that immediate family. My whole family, my immediate family. Right. And so just ways that people require you to not have your authentic grief experience is absolutely shaped by race, gender, class, and economics.
And even theology.
And theology, yes. Oh,
right. Even theology. I mean, so when people say things like, I'm expressing my grief, I'm expressing my emotion. When I was preaching the other Sunday, I said, I want to give you space to be sorrowful. And I talked about the psalmists and how they took time to express their pain, express their anger, express their grief. Yes. And we don't give people space, even in church, to do that. We think people got to always be joyous, always be happy, always be jumping and shouting. And that we don't give space for the lament.
We don't give space. Being a resurrection people does not mean we need to disregard the actual trauma and the lament, right? So it is, as you said, in faith spaces, and even ideas like, folks are in a better place now, and God needed them more.
God needed a flower for his garden.
All these flowers out here. Right. So sometimes we use that our faith, and I understand. So I acknowledge that some of this is, I need some comfort, and I think this might also comfort you.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't acknowledge. We can acknowledge that I am in deep pain, and yes, I still love God, and I'm
I
in
still
deep
trust.
pain, and I still trust God, and I'm in deep pain, and one day I'll smile again, but not today. And I have permission today to not smile and be victorious. And that's the thing. We have a certain look of victory. And there is a marathoner. When they like one of the first years at the marathon, you as a marathoner.
Oh, I love marathon.
One of the first years that the marathon was in the Olympics, there was a woman who ran the marathon, and there were not enough water stations throughout the marathon. So when she got to the end, she literally, her body locked. She could not move. Okay. And so she had to swing her arm in order to move her leg. And so the last, like maybe 100 meters, she's swinging her arm but guess what? She was victorious. So sometimes we want people to be celebrating and jumping and shouting I can have the victory and be crying throughout the entire service. That does not diminish victory for me. So yeah, that marathon, I watched that. I was like, she gave me popping bottles is not always the look of victory. Sometimes
the goal is to finish.
The goal, and she finished. So
and
yeah,
that's the victory. Yeah, that's the victory. Oh my goodness, we could talk all day. This is so good. So now the holidays are upon us.
Yes.
And so there's a particular grief that comes this time of year.
Yeah.
Can you just share a little bit about how do we hold space for those who are grieving during the holidays? So many of us are, like I said, me and my sisters, this is our 4th year with our mom. And so we're still trying to figure out what does holidays look like and feel like, and creating new traditions without somebody's missing from the table this year.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love that you said creating new traditions. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, right? So sometimes the first year, everybody might scatter, and I don't know what we're going to do. And so we invite people to scatter if this is the year to scatter. Some years it is the year to scatter. And then some years it's how do we cultivate new traditions, new rituals that bring in the spirit of the person who's not here? How do we, within our own community, so how do you sit down and say, okay, what do we like and want? Because one thing is we have permission to do something new too. And it's not a betrayal to the person who's not at the table anymore. Right. So if there's something that looks completely different from what you're used to, we have permission to do that and know that is what carrying on looks like. So that's one thing. Another thing is, give folks the space to feel what they feel. We don't have to fix people's feelings, right? Grief is not a sickness, so you can't cure it. So we're also not fixing people's grief. If someone comes to the family dinner and they are a little sad, give them the space to be sad, right? Like just love on them in their sadness. Just let them, don't try to force them. So we don't need to force people to feel what we feel. Allow them to be exactly where they are is really helpful. And then even for us, knowing that it's okay for you to feel what you feel. We don't have to put the mask on. You don't. In fact, I think it's healthy sometimes to name for folks that, what I showed up for dinner. Yo, I got to tell you, it took everything I had to put these clothes on to come here today. I think sometimes that helps folks, because guess what? Somebody else in the family is like, me too. I almost didn't come. So the honesty around feeling can be helpful at the holidays. For those who are going to stores and things, remember that the song that your loved one always played might come on. And so making space for the swift moments that come by where the emotion is high, right? They done played the song in my mind, and now now your heart is feeling heavy. That's okay. It's you haven't reverted. You haven't, taken a step back. You are human. And that means that for the rest of your life, there might be a song that plays. There might be a scent that you smell. Yeah. There might be someone else that you see.
And foods, you know what I'm saying? Because foods that go with the holiday, and that person might have been the one to make those. Like for me, it was sweet potato pie with my mom. Only time I eat sweet potato pie.
Right.
Only time I ate eat, even now, the only time I eat sweet potato pie is during the holidays.
Yes.
Right. But then the only person that I would eat that sweet potato pie was my mom. So the first year she was gone, I was like, no, who gonna make my sweet potato pie?
Who gonna make it? Because I don't want nobody else's.
I didn't want anybody else's.
Yeah. And make it
Then I had to learn how to make it. And I developed, me and my daughter, the first year, I remember my daughter and I, we got in the kitchen together and we made sweet potato pies. And that was so healing for me.
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Tony, I have this. So this is one of the boxes that we help families create, right? And so something that we invite people to do during the holidays, and it could be a shoebox, right? So invite everybody who's coming to dinner to bring the thing, bring the thing that reminds them, that represents for them something that they love, right?
To see this. Okay.
Good. Something that they love. Now, this is something that we use for children, right? So we use this for children. And so the person brought their little, wrap. And so they brought things that reminded them of their loved one for whoever's home it was, right? And so if it's my home, folks are going to bring things about my grandmother. We put them in this box and it becomes sort of the holiday box. So during the holidays, you get to come by, the box is always there, and somebody might be like, go get the box. And then we tell stories about what's in the box. Pull the picture up with Uncle Todd. Pull the picture, and then you get to tell the story. I love
that idea.
So a shoebox will do. It ain't got to be nothing fancy, but even if you use a shoebox, I invited the kids. We use construction paper, we color it, we draw things, and so make the shoebox pretty, but it invites everybody into the family to bring something, a contribution to the box of these are like, this is our box of love, this is our memory box, and it invites everybody to contribute, and then you have something on the holiday. So no, Alberta Brown is not here, but is it time for the box, y'all? Go get the box, right? And the kids, there are folks in my family who they were born 5-10 years after my grandmother.
Okay.
But they know the stories. Why? Because on the holidays, we get the box and we start telling stories. And so that's a way to, you'll laugh and you'll cry. But it's a way to, one, keep memory. They ain't never met Alberta, but they know who she is. And you get to sit back and just, she sure was. I remember when she threw that whole bag of rolls at me. I don't know what I did, but she threw a whole, right? And then sent me to the store to get a new bag of rolls because the ones she threw, now they dirty, right? So just you get to tell stories, and that can be a helpful thing for you to do as solo, but also for you to do with family and community, because again, it can allow your joy and your sad, it can allow that to coexist. It can make a very meaningful moment. And then it allows those who didn't know your loved one to know them themselves. Yeah. So I invite people to think.
Oh my God. I love that idea. I love that, Dr. Jaime. Wow. So that just brings me to some of the other work that you're doing.
Yes.
So can you talk to us a little bit about thoughtful transitions?
Yeah.
And tell me, why did you name your ministry Thoughtful Transitions? Tell us about that, and then some of the services that you provide for Thoughtful Transitions.
Yeah. So it was July 31st, 2019. And I had been doing this work for some time. Okay. And I went to sleep and I was like, okay, God, I know I'm supposed to start the business. I'm supposed to start it, but I don't know what to call it. And I literally woke up in the morning, August 1st, with Thoughtful Transitions. And I was like, but I was like, it's transition.
I'm going to add this up there so they can see this. Okay.
Right. It's Thoughtful Transitions. And it was, I was thinking I had to use something with the word of sort of like end of life in it. But God reminded me that we are always in transition. And so the support that Thoughtful Transitions offers community is not just support around the end of life. We do end of life planning with people in communities though, right? So we help you with paperwork. We help you, decide on what you want to happen with your body and how to make funeral arrangements. We help you have meaningful conversations with the rest of the family. We open up space for grief. So we help people through the grieving process as you are in your end of life transition. So we do that. But there are other transitions. We support people who are navigating shifts in identity, relationships, jobs, anyone who can name a loss, a change, or transition, and they want to explore it more deeply and find ways to continue reimagining themselves for their today and tomorrow. We journey with them. And so we think it's a healing work. And we also do it for organizations, because churches, right? There are some churches who a pastor will leave. Well, let's work with you around this pastor who is no longer here and maybe pastoring someplace else as you prepare for a new pastor. Let's talk, let's open space for this grief so that we can help you grow, right? Because sometimes the loss can keep us stuck. And this is individual or organization. And so we want to make sure that you are allowing yourself to remember yourself whole, to continue growing, to continue becoming. So we do it for people, we do it for churches, other groups, and this is workshops, retreats, and our remembering journey that's coming up. Every year we offer these.
That's what I was going to ask you. Share a little bit about the remembering journey. I put that on the screen.
Yes.
For those of us who are, if you're not on YouTube, I want you to go to YouTube and see the actual flyer. But Dr. Jaime, talk to us about the remembering journey and the service that you provide there, this program that you're providing.
Yeah, so our remembering journey is it's a space that allows you to start to chart the rest of your life, right? So it is, how do I make meaning of the losses I've experienced? Sometimes that requires somebody to journey with you to help you acknowledge the loss. There's mass grief, as we think about terms, mass, M-A-S-K-E-D, mass grief. It is some of these situations that particularly Black women have gone through have been normalized so much that we don't even recognize it as grief, right? And so then it starts to manifest in our bodies in different ways. So this journey is a monthly journey and or a quarterly journey where you get to have someone in a group setting, so community matters, journey with you in identifying some losses, being able to pull, as you said before, sort of pull the good. What is this? What do I bring forward with me in my today and tomorrow? What are some things that I need to reevaluate and let go? How do I shift boundaries as a result of this loss? What did that loss teach me about me? Oh, that loss taught me that I say yes way too often. And then I need to, why am I saying yes? I say yes because I don't think I'm gonna get another chance. So that's around sufficiency and lack and worth. And so we take this journey with people, always looking at how these losses have impacted our lives. And then we create a plan, our own care plan for how we will pull the meaning and what it looks like moving forward. That includes developing healthy rituals. I create this nurture kit, which is body butter, bath salts, and bath bombs and things like that, so that you can nurture yourself as you go through this program. So that is our remembering. It is, how do I reconnect to myself and to the divine in me so that I can realize that the loss I've experienced, it does not have to be my end. I don't have to move through life like the Walking Dead, that I can live and thrive even in the face of loss. So that's what that journey is about.
I love that. I can live. How did you say that again?
I can live and thrive even in the face of loss.
Even in the face of loss. I love that. Whoa, Dr. Jaime, this has been such a powerful and enriching conversation. I don't know if those of you that are listening and watching us on YouTube, you need to connect with Dr. Jaime this is just profound. I have been helped. Just listening to you, having this conversation with you has been so meaningful for me. And I want to make sure that those that are listening to us can find you and connect with you beyond this podcast conversation. I just want those, if you're listening to us on Spotify, I want you to make sure that you go to my YouTube channel so you can watch the podcast on YouTube. So this is the Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with Dr. Tony Alvarado. You'll find us on Spotify and on YouTube, my YouTube channel. I really, really, really need to to promote the YouTube channel because we want to increase our viewership there so that we can go up in the analytics and more people can find out about this podcast. So as you're listening and watching this podcast, you can share the link and get other people involved in these conversations. I want you heard Dr. Jaime say, we need a community. So I want to invite you to join the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self-Care Network. For those of you that are looking for a community around self-care, health, wellness, and having conversations like this and bringing in people like Dr. Jaime, please join us in the Harmonize Your Life Self-Care Network. You can do that by going to my website at drtonyalvarado.com. We are right now taking applications for our intentional self-care program for the 2025 cohort. If you're interested in that, email me at hello@drtonyalvarado.com. Our guest today is Dr. Jaime Eaddy Chism, and I want you to make sure that you find her. I want to put her information up there. Let me take that down. So Dr. Jaime Eaddy Chism, thanatologist, traumatologist, grief doula, all the things. All right. So she has really, 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 really helped us with this idea and conversation around thoughtful transitions and grief. Thoughtful transitions. And I love that. Thoughtful transitions, because we're going to go through transition, but it's how we go through it that really, really matters. And so thank you so much, Dr. Jaime. You can reach Dr. Jaime at Thoughtful Transitions. That's the name of her organization, and her website there, thoughtfultransitions.org. Go to her website, learn about the programs that she is offering, the program that she just mentioned. Let me put that back up on the screen. Let me add that. So Thoughtful Transitions, you can go there, sign up for her program. It starts January, every first Saturday in January through March. She has a 3-month and a 12-month program, right?
Yes.
So you can sign up for the 90-day, or you can sign up for the 12-month program there. I want to promote. Listen, Dr. Tony is not just promoting her work, but I want to promote the work of my sisters, because listen, it takes a whole community for us to do this work. I can't coach everybody. She can't coach everyone. So we're doing this work together. And some of you might want to do her program and my program. It doesn't matter. We can work together and get this work done. And so go to her website at thoughtfultransitions.org. I want to make sure that you are aware of her program. You can find her on Facebook at Jaime Eaddy Chism. She is on Instagram at Dr. Jaime Eaddy. She is on Blue Sky and Threads at Dr. Jaime Eaddy. Listen, go there, find her, connect with her, bring her to your church, bring her to your women's group. Just get the healing work that you need and invite others on the healing journey with you through the work that Dr. Jaime Eaddy is doing. Dr. Jaime, will you just give us one last word of encouragement as we prepare to sign off?
Yeah, your experience matters, and the loss that you've experienced was not designed to take you out. So sit back, pause, and allow that to be the catalyst that moves you into your future. You can live and thrive, even in the face of loss. God bless you and thank you.
You can live and thrive. If you don't remember anything else she said today, write that down. You can live and thrive. even in the face of loss. Dr. Jaime Eaddy, I'm telling you, this right here, I want this conversation to go viral. Okay, we got to do whatever we need to do to make this conversation go viral because it's needed.
Yes.
This work is needed in our community,
Yeah.
and I suspect that as we move forward into 2025 and beyond, we're going to need this even more.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to need spaces like this where we can express and have room to grieve and to heal and thrive,
And thrive.
even in the midst of loss. Thank you, my sister.
Thank
you
you.
so much. I look forward to working with you even more through the
Yes.
Wellness Circle and all the work that we're going to be doing there together and anything else God says that we're supposed to do together. I look forward to it.
Yes, same, Doc. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right. All right, you all. This is a wonderful start to the month of December on the Harmonize Your Life podcast with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. We'll see you again right here, same station at another time with another intriguing podcast conversations. See you soon.